Awesome. Okay, so before we get started, we encourage everyone to turn on their cameras if they can, because it would just be great to see everyone's faces. And then if you guys have any questions that you'd like our panelists to answer, I will send a link in chat. So we'll be using Padlet to collect questions. So in Padlet, you can just click on the plus button at the plus pink button at the bottom right, and then you can type in your name, you can type in your question as the title. And then in the description, you can add your name so that we can keep track of points that you earn throughout this panel, just like how Wendy is demonstrating. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so if any of you already thought of questions beforehand, feel free to drop them in and include your name so we can track the number of points. Okay, so now we'll get started with our activity.
Alrighty, and on your screen, you will, on Pear Deck, if you went to joinpd.com, there will be a little space for you to draw what you think a person in CS looks like. Please make sure you keep those drawings appropriate. If not, I will have to delete them, so bear that in mind. And we will give you all a few minutes to sort of start drawing what you think a person in CS looks like. I'm seeing a lot of circles right now on my screen. I see a lot of heads. That is a very good place to start off with. And I'll also just drop in the chat one more time, joinpd.com with the code of UVOCKZ. Alrighty, now that we are sort of a little bit on our ways of drawing, let's just kind of take a look at what you all have so far. Feel free to keep drawing and making these amazing, amazing drawings. Right here we have person, some headphones, some glasses. I have glasses too. I see a person at a desk with a computer. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Could be anyone. Also,
I love that. I love that.
Absolutely. I see a common trend with the red headphones. I see a lot of people. Very nice. More glasses. A face, some hair. Something right here. Sideways glasses maybe, or it could be an upright desk with a computer. Ah, I love the green, the pops of color. Absolutely. More chairs and people sitting at desks. Yep. Headphones, or that person has gray hair. Absolutely. More glasses and computers. Yep. And then I believe one more person just joined us from the waiting room. But for the person who joined us, I am so sorry I did not catch your name and burn it into my brain in time. But feel free to head over to joinpd.com and enter in the code UVOCKZ if you want to participate in our drawing activity. And we will give you all about one more minute to finish up those drawings. So to put those last few finishing touches on it. Oh, wow. More details are coming around from when we last scrolled through. Absolutely. I'm loving the color you all included. Oh, more headphones. Yellow this time. Big brain. Yep.
Facts.
And you all have very big brains as well. Alrighty. Thank you all so much for these amazing drawings. And I'll pass things off to Natalia to sort of like wrap up our drawing activity.
Yeah, so guys, what were some like common trends or patterns that you've seen throughout all the drawings that everyone made? Feel free to drop them in chat. Okay, yeah, we have headphones. Yeah, glasses was a common trend. Yeah, obviously people, yeah, we need the technology because this is computer science. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so thank you for sharing. So yeah, people are sitting in desks, lots of glasses, kind of like the nerdy stereotype. Yeah, so usually, yeah, so as we saw in the drawings that you guys made, so I guess like usually the image that comes to mind when we think of a computer, when we think of a person in computer science, is that they're like a white male that wears glasses, they're kind of nerdy, maybe hasn't showered in a few days, so they're really smelly, or essentially gamers, right? And so it's like these stereotypes and dangerous assumptions like these that kind of deter people of underrepresented backgrounds to consider and pursue computer science, right? But I think some of you guys made some drawings that did not fit the stereotype. So I'm glad that like that's not the first image that pops into your minds, and like we're kind of changing the narrative, right? Awesome. Okay, so next slide. Okay, yeah, so here are just some statistics that we came across regarding the representation in CS. So as you can see, only women make up 18% of graduates with a degree in CS. 8.9% of CS degrees were awarded to Black students. Hispanic women in CS only make 61% of earnings compared to their white male counterparts. And only women hold 16% of senior level positions and 10% of executive level positions. Yeah, so as you guys can see, there's kind of like a lack of representation and support in both education and in the workplace. And one of the important things that we'll be talking about today is the importance of diversity and why it's needed, and along with what we can do as individuals to kind of bridge the gap.
And before we do start introducing our amazing panelists, here are a few definitions of some things we'll be talking about in our panel, or our panelists might bring up in their introductions. So our first one for today is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is doubting your abilities and feeling like you're a fraud and that someone is going to expose you for being a fraud. And it's very common in university settings as well as workplace settings. But just know you are not an imposter, you belong here. Our second one for today is ERG, which is an employee resource group, and it's an employee-led group that helps to foster a diverse and inclusive workspace that is aligned with sort of mission, group mission, value, as well as practices. And then our last definition for today is a hackathon. It is a competitive event where people will work on different software or hardware projects, and in the attempt of making a full finishing functioning product that they can share with people and that can maybe even change the world. With these definitions, are there any questions or any necessary clarifications? Feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. All right, okay, it doesn't seem like there are any at the moment. If there are, always feel free to raise your hand or to message Natalia and I, and we would be more than happy to help out. And with that, let's kick off panelist introductions. Oops, not that one. That is supposed to be a skip slide. Let's kick off panelist introductions. The very first one is with Christopher Miller. If you would like to unmute and share a bit more about yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Miller. I'm a UCLA alumni, graduated back in 2014 with my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering. But I've actually transitioned over to software and CS for about the last 3 or 4 years due to a rotational program at Northrop Grumman where I work now. And I'm happy to be here. Actually, I guess I should speak on my new position. I actually just got transitioned to being a software manager. So I'm excited to take on that new role and be able to help eventually diversify the pool of talent that we bring into Northrop Grumman. So I really look forward to speaking, more with you guys and answering any questions that you guys have about CS and diversity in CS and why it's so important to all industries to have diversity in every aspect of the industry. So I really look forward to talking with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christopher. Okay, and then now we have Amy Kim.
Hi guys, my name is Amy. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Technovation. We are a technology education nonprofit that serves girls. We roughly serve about 20 to 23,000 girls over 60 to 70 countries every year. What we do is we teach girls how to find a problem, build an app or AI prototype, and try to pitch it. And every year they're winners from all around the world that we celebrate. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that as hopefully the program goes on. I'm actually trained as a physical chemist. My dad is a CS professor, and I swore that I was never going to be a programmer. That was like one of my career goals, to never do what my dad does. But then very quickly I learned while I was doing my research that you kind of have to learn how to code, even if you're not a computer scientist, because you need to know how to build equipment, you need to know how to build your own image analysis. So I'm pretty self-taught in my languages. I am no expert by any means, but one thing I learned during that journey is that really anybody can learn how to code if you're given the right environment and the right kind of positive reinforcement structure. So I've been involved in increasing especially women diversity in engineering over the last 10 years. I used to lead a program at the Girl Scouts. Also, I led the Women in Engineering program at USC. I know we have a lot of Bruins here, but there are other universities too. I also am pretty active in volunteering at different organizations here in LA. I've been part of the Girls in Tech LA. I led March for Science LA, also like Hack for LA. There's various different places that you guys can get engaged with, even at a young age, like Women in Gaming Industry, which has a very active chapter here in LA. So hopefully I can tell you guys a little bit more about that. And if you guys need any statistics on why women need to be more represented, I can definitely share that as well. So.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amy. Our next panelist for today is Isabelle Kettner.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Isabelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a current student at UCLA. Excuse me. I'm actually graduating in June, which is mind-blowing and weird, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. But yeah, while I've been here on campus, I've been the president of the Society of Women Engineers at UCLA. We are the largest diversity-oriented engineering club, primarily focused on supporting women and non-binary individuals into achieving excellence in the engineering school. I'm also the co-founder of Queer Hacks. So Wendy gave a lovely definition for a hackathon. And so Queer Hacks was a hackathon focused on supporting and bringing visibility to the LGBTQIA community at UCLA and beyond. After graduation, I'll be a software engineer at AWS. If you don't know what AWS is, it's like a subsidiary of Amazon. So that's cool. And then in my free time, I love to run and cuddle my cats and watch way too many TikToks. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Isabelle. And last but not least, we have Stephanie Sue.
Hi everyone, I'm a Bay Area high school senior interested in tech, business, and social impact. I'm going to be graduating really soon, which is also crazy to think about, even though I'm only in high school. Haven't committed yet, but I'll be majoring in CS either at UC Berkeley or Carnegie Mellon, so that's really exciting and kind of a hard decision to make. I'm most known for being the lead director of Superposition, an international nonprofit bridging the gender gap in STEM through chapters, events, and mentorship. Our programs include 79 international chapters, the Bay Area's largest all-women and non-binary hackathon, and 2 mentorship programs in partnership with Uber. In fact, our 5th hackathon, Superposition 5, is actually happening right now. So I will be getting back to that after the panel. And outside of Superposition, I also run an organization that helps consult student nonprofits so that they can create impact in their own communities. And I also love doing public speaking engagements just like this, so I can share my experience with everyone else.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. We have amazing panelists lined up for us today, which is absolutely amazing. And now we will get started with sort of our Q&A. Natalia and I have a few pre-prepared questions for our panelists, but you all, the students, please feel free to drop in questions into this Padlet. Natalia just dropped it. We have the same brain. Oh my gosh, we already see some questions. That is so amazing. I absolutely love that. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen so we can see everyone's beautiful faces and kick things off with our very first question of why did you decide to pursue tech as a career?
I can start. Like I said, my father was a computer scientist. My mom's actually a fashion designing professor. So I really wanted to pick a career path that did not overlap with either of them. Was one of my rebellious teenage goals. I actually got into science and a little bit more in the engineering space because I wanted to solve problems. I actually built microscopes to study insulin dynamic in diabetic systems. So I really wanted to kind of figure out a way how you can use science and engineering to solve a problem. And although I am no longer in active science research, I am mostly in the science engineering education space and sort of the advocacy space. I think one thing you learn very much in science and engineering is how to learn new things. Like you're not afraid if somebody says, say that you only learned how to code in C, and then somebody says, okay, now we're gonna build this software in Python. Fear is not always something that debilitates people because you've learned at least once that you were able to learn something hard and apply it to something. So I do really like that in your journey of learning to be a scientist or an engineer, that you learn how to problem solve and you learn how to learn. And that's a very key skill that I think in any career you can apply. And I think that will hopefully help you with the imposter syndrome as well, that we'll talk about a little bit later. But for me, it was really important to solve a problem in the world. And right now, the problem I'm trying to solve is gender equity in science and engineering and technology. There's no one solution, but I'm hoping that I'm making a dent in it. So, yeah.
I can take this next because that was an amazing answer, Amy. I will say for me, I kind of fell into it. I had no idea what a computer scientist did when I was in high school. I had no idea what coding was. I knew I wanted to pick an engineering major because I knew I liked math and science, as vague and weird as that was. And I also wanted to make money. I'm not ashamed in saying that. That's a reasonable thing to think about when you're picking a major. So I kind of just closed my eyes and picked one. Happened to be electrical engineering, and part of that we had required courses in computer science. I took those, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, this is so fun, I really like doing this, I really like problem solving in this way. And that kind of just shifted my trajectory, and now I'm a computer engineering major, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's kind of a half and half mix of CS and electrical engineering, but I will just be doing straight up software engineering as my job. Yeah, so it's kind of a really lucky coincidence that I fell into tech, but now that I'm here, I don't want to go back.
Nice. I guess speak next. My story is, I guess, very similar to Amy's and Isabelle in the fact that I guess I didn't necessarily know that I was going to get into computer engineering as well. Like Isabelle, I really enjoyed math in high school, but I wanted to do something more than just basic math. I wanted to somehow be able to apply that math to do something cool. And obviously that pointed me towards engineering. Just like Isabella as well, I started off as electrical engineering, but due to a nice rotational program that my company has, I actually, just from speaking with some coworkers, heard about some cool things that they were doing that were software related, reached out to my manager and requested that I get some exposure to that. And I haven't looked back since. But almost exactly to what Isabelle was saying before too, my real, I guess, drive for even getting to engineering in the first place was somewhat dealing with the money, but more so the stability. I don't think you'll find more stable of an industry than engineering. Obviously with COVID going on, there a lot of jobs were lost, which is unfortunate, but I think engineering was probably one of the most stable industries in regards to, people retaining their jobs and things of that nature. So not that I ever knew anything like this, would ever happen, but I just knew that there always, as long as we're solving new problems in the world and innovating new things, there was always going to be a need for engineers, right? And so why not be someone that's in the forefront of developing these new innovations?
I can answer this question next. So obviously I haven't started my career yet, but I'm looking to become a product manager because it's a nice blend of all my interests. Growing up, I was in a family of software engineers, so I've had a really large tech influence in my life. My siblings are both software engineers right now, though my parents stopped doing that. So in sixth grade, my dad found a programming course on WeChat, and all my Asian friends will relate to this, but he signed me up without telling me, and that's how I learned to program. So I built a really primitive looking game called Flappy Ball, which is like Flappy Bird, but without the bird and terrible graphics. Yeah, it was not fun. However, the building part was really exciting because I'd been participating in a lot of competitive math before and I love problem solving. But with CS, what I found in CS that wasn't in math was the ability to create something. Instead of just solving problems on a paper, I was able to make something and see it come to life. It's like creating something out of nothing. It's almost like magic. And that's what I really enjoyed about CS. Another thing is its intersectionality. I can combine my interest in tech, business, and design and tech with literally anything I want to because it's such a vast field. So currently I'm interning at an ed tech startup, and though I am working with tech, I'm still working on the business side, so I can get both aspects of this interest. And last but not least, the money is really a huge factor. My siblings, they work at Wish and Amazon. They're living their best lives. They can do anything they want. They don't need to worry about financial stability that much, and that's really something that pulls me into CS.
Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for sharing. Personally, I'm a CS major and I kind of relate to like all the reasons of why you guys chose what you decide to do. Like I love the problem solving. I love how you can build apps and how people use the apps. And of course the money, I want a stable life. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying that, but yeah, honestly, it's just something important that we have to consider. Okay, awesome. So we'll go on to our second question. So what kind of challenges do you guys face as a minority in CS?
I can answer from the perspective of the program we run. So like I said, we serve girls in multiple different countries to entry. What we really try to do is get them to understand, just like what Stephanie was saying, that you can apply CS to really solve any problems and combine multiple interests. So our goal always isn't that everybody becomes a CS major, but people realize that technology is something that can build. And like, we've had students who really like studied, fashion designing and then built an app that can like help connect their e-commerce business to things. So I don't suggest that everybody feels like they need to study computer science, but really understand that this is going to be just like you learn foreign languages, just like you learn how to cook or drive, like it is going to become an essential skill set that almost everybody's going to need to know. So like think of it as something you can apply to many different things. But so a lot of our students are obviously very underrepresented when they go to college or any field. When my father was getting his PhD in computer science in the 80s, there were actually 25 to 30% women represented in CS. So even though we've done a lot of diversity initiatives, there is a huge reduction in actually women who are graduating in CS compared to the 80s. And that comes in multiple different reasons. And I think hopefully Chris can talk a little bit about his experience. I don't know if he got kicked out. Oh, Christopher, Chris, I see. A lot of companies are putting a lot of effort into increasing diversity and creating programs, mentorships. There's also, like, in full honesty, there is a biological clock that only women have, because if you want to have a kid and you tend to be in your mid-career kind of like area, like, I didn't have my first child until I was 35. If I wasn't getting a PhD and if I wasn't in science, maybe I may have done it earlier, but those things all come into play. But find the most important thing I think you should do is find your network of people who support you. It could be your parents, it could be your mentor, it could be your college friends, it could be your high school friends. There's a network of people, women and men, or non-gender specific. Just really find people who support you in regard, no matter what you do. And that takes time to build, but that network is what will support you even when you face challenges. So being underrepresented is hard, but I do think that there are more and more networks and more programs, more and more people who are advocating for women and especially minority students to continue this pathway. So find your kind of space, especially in college. I graduated college in 2003, and like my best friends from college are still my best friends who encourage me to do whatever I can do. So make sure you find that network, and that will really help you.
Yeah, I guess I can speak next. I agree with everything that Amy just spoke of. I think really one of the biggest challenges is just getting past, people's preconceptions of what a CS person looks like. I think, the exercise that you guys started off with was like a good example of that, right? People have this idea of what a CS major looks like or what a CS major sounds like or et cetera, right? And I think sometimes you have to get past that with, your new coworkers and your new employees. But I think that a lot of industries have done a good job of incorporating what I think Natalia spoke of, these employee resource groups, ERGs. At my company, Northrop Grumman, that I work at, we have 13 employee resource groups, which are basically like clubs, I guess, for lack of better, definition, but for employees. So I'm actually the president of the African American task group at my company. And we hold events, that support diversity. We reach out, we do community outreach, we do all kind of events that support diversity in the workplace. And each ERG does similar things for their specific community. And so I think because of these employee resource groups that a lot of companies have incorporated, you'll see that a lot of the challenges that probably were posed to some of the older generations are not becoming as big of issues, I think, coming into the workplace now, which is, a really good thing. Obviously, there's still obstacles that we have to overcome, but I think those challenges have become less and less as companies are starting to realize the importance of diversity and diversity of thought from their employees, right? You don't want everyone thinking the same way or approaching problems the same way, right? Because as much as every problem is complex and needs a different approach. And so I think companies are starting to realize that, and that's leading to less and less of these challenges in regards to diversity in CS.
Yeah, I think both Chris and Amy made really great points. And I will say that like the challenges that you might face or like we all face, it's different for everyone, which is kind of like the beauty of diversity is, everyone has a different lived experience. So I will say I'll preface this, by saying I'm a white person. I'm lucky to be a white person. The fact that I am white grants me a lot of privilege that other people may not get, but I am also a white queer woman, which in tech may not be the most stereotypical thing. But a lot of times, it's like this problem with being a minority is twofold. There's a lack of representation and there's a lack of visibility. And so Amy and Chris really spoke well to the lack of representation, but especially for the queer community, there's a lack of visibility because I'm sure, and we all know there's like a lot of really awesome queer people in tech, but because their stories aren't told, because their stories aren't spotlighted, if you're a queer person in tech, you feel really alone and isolated, and you really like have no idea that these other people are out there and there's this whole community out there, which is why I started Queer Hacks. It's one of the first LGBTQIA hackathons in the nation. It was really just made so that we could find this community. And everyone there who attended was, the common theme there was everyone was like, wow, this is the first time I felt any sort of community in this space, which was really like the goal. So yeah, I guess, yeah, kind of like that twofold kind of issues there. But yeah, like Chris and Amy said, a lot of it boils down to like finding your people and finding your homies and finding those people that support you and empower you in all of your identities. So yeah.
Can I just add something real quick?
Yeah.
So I actually inherited, so in graduate school, often you inherit physical setups, and experiments, I inherited a setup from a guy who was 6'6" and I'm 5'3". And actually more than the gender barrier, I had like a physical height barrier. Like I physically couldn't reach all the things that the lab was built for. So over the 5 years of my PhD program, of course, I customized everything back to my height. Now I had power over what I could do. And I also made up, I did a lot of optics work, and you actually use nail polish oftentimes to lock down mirrors and screws. I chose to always use hot pink. So even till I graduated my PhD 10 years ago, there's still very evidence of a woman have been in this lab even today. Like all the stools, I painted it hot pink, like neon yellow. I think when you get to a place where you feel comfortable, leave your mark. And I think it's important to like Isabelle was saying, represent all of your identities, speak about it, leave a mark, draw a poster, write a student thesis. Like these things are all like, it may not feel like a lot, but like, I've actually heard from some of the graduate students, like female students who inherited my setups 10 years later, says, I still see these little feminine touches in the lab and it feels like it's okay for me to be here. So like, we all can play very small roles, but we don't all have to become like the female president of some company, but we can all leave a mark. We can mentor one person. We can be like, show up to a conference in a flowery dress if you want, like, like they take a little stance little by little, and those will all contribute to making it more diverse. So like, we can all contribute a little by.
And I'll go next for this. So I haven't been in tech for too long because I'm considerably younger than most other people here. However, I have experienced what it feels like to be a minority in the room and feel physically and socially isolated. I've been in math classrooms where as soon as I walked in the class, the teacher exclaimed, "Wow, we have our first girl." like, look at that. I was like, why is this so revolutionary? It should not be. And that's kind of most of my experiences. Another thing was running an all women and non-binary hackathon. You get quite some backlash because when you have programs that are supposed to be supporting minorities, the majority sometimes feels like they're trying to be oppressed. And I was once on a Discord server for Bay Area high school hackathons. Someone copy pasted an exact part of Superposition's website that said we don't have males as attendees, but they can be mentors and stuff like that. And they said, and I quote, "If I start an all male hackathon, you would lose your blank." Cannot really say that right now, but you can kind of fill in. And instead of trying to clap back at them immediately, I realized that probably wasn't really productive. So we ended up having a 3-hour Discord debate about the mayor of all female hackathons. And that was really great for me because previously we did get some backlash before, notably from a guy who said 80% of the dishwashing industry is female, but nobody seems to complain about that. So yeah, at that point, I kind of just tried to like roast him or something. However, didn't really go out too much because we ended up both blocking each other. However, with that Discord debate, we both came to some common ground that all female hackathons may be sexist by definition because they do exclude men. However, they are effective in bringing more girls into technology, and that is a cause that merits that kind of discrimination. And I think it's really important to foster dialogue with people who don't support you, because previously I'd taken for granted that everyone supported all women in non-binary hackathons. I just thought everyone would support diversity, but I didn't really know or explain why. So throughout that debate, not only did I get to share my perspective with someone else and learn about their perspective, I was able to become more passionate about my cause because I finally had to spell out why it was so important to me. So recommend that to everyone. If you come across someone who disagrees with you, instead of shutting them down, you should really talk to them about it.
Yes, absolutely. You all brought up such really, really good points about like the difficulties that minorities do face in STEM. And you even touched upon our next question as well, which is why is representation and diversity important? You all already touched a little bit on it. So if you want to elaborate more, feel free to.
Yeah, I guess I can speak to it first. Again, with my new role, I guess so. First off, I'd like to start with when you get into industry, it's very important to realize that for the most part in computer engineering, you're going to be working with a team, right? Nobody is ever off in a corner by themselves, working by themselves, right? That's not really realistic. It may be at least not in my experience, has that not been the case. So from working with many teams since I've been in the industry, you start to realize and appreciate the need for diversity of thought and for diversity of thinking, right? You realize that you appreciate not everyone has the same opinions, not everyone has the same approach, not everyone has the same method of doing things. And that's what makes a team, I think, more efficient, more effective, and more, I guess, productive. I've been a team lead for about 2 or 3 years now, and every time I'm putting together a team to work on a specific project, I am specifically looking for people that are vastly different, right? What is the point of having a team if everyone does things the same way, right? What's the need for a team? And so from my experience, when I'm doing recruiting now and I'm looking for people to put together teams, I'm looking for again, that diversity, and that comes in a variety of different things, right? It comes in, it's not just gender, it's race, it's age, it's there's a lot background, upbringing. There's a lot of things that factor into diversity, and I think that's why it's important to really get to know people and understand what they bring to the table, because at the end of the day, that uniqueness that person brings is something that I think helps build strong teams. And so I think that's, from my experience, that's one of the most important reasons for diversity in industry.
Yeah, bouncing off of that, you kind of stole my answer, because I definitely think diversity of thought, diversity of thinking is really important to make sure the products we make reflect the needs of everyone. If you make something by a homogenous group, like say just cis white men make all the products in the world, which is kind of what's happening, but that's whatever. Then suddenly you see these things are catered only to them, and they often don't take into account, say like disabled people's needs or any other group that is generally neglected. But I think on a more like finer grain level, I think representation is super important just for empowerment. I don't think we can understate the value of seeing yourself reflected somewhere, especially a place where you're aspiring to be. When I joined SWE, which is short for Society of Women Engineers, my freshman year, what struck me most was like their leadership. And I was just like, I want to be like them. These women are so cool. Like I want to be at the table they're at, and I want to like be like them. And then I did it. But I think having those sort of role models and representation reflected is like the most empowering, especially if you haven't experienced that before.
If I can add, so I think there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of great nonprofits and organizations. Like SWE is a really awesome organization. You should definitely join when you go to college, because it also provides you a great professional network even after college. There's other organizations like She++ at Stanford. There's a lot of great organizations. One thing I do want to add is that it's still, our work isn't complete. Like for example, there's a lot of conversation right now around the ethics of AI. Like the people who built a lot of our machine learning algorithms only put in pictures of white male. I don't know if you guys remember about like many years ago, like they couldn't recognize anybody who was African American in these facial recognition softwares. Like, so they're real price for lack of representation, and those things come into play. But I do want to also not completely leave you with a rosy picture, because I think there's still a lot of work to do. There is a documentary on Netflix that's out right now. It's about coded bias. And it's really about like how are women and people of color not represented in AI? And what is the consequence of that? Like we're building, facial recognition technology for police that are very biased towards white male. Like there's a lot of real consequences. So it's important to be aware. It's important to know this. One of the things that we do in my organization is when we teach girls and to develop a technology, we actually have them think about the ethical consequences of it. So if you're building an AI model, if you're only putting in images that like come up in the first page of Google, you're already implementing that bias to it. So like, how can you make sure that's not happening? Or if you're building speech recognition models that only understands English, that anybody with an accent, nobody from different dialects, those all have prices. So find ways to learn about what is the consequences of lack of representation. I'm not saying we all need to be like, fighting for it the way others, but I think we should all be aware as you're building your app, as you're building your technology, or even for Chris's, if he's building, let's say like a satellite system, these all have hidden consequences to not having a wide representation. So as you guys become technologists and build problem solves in your own way, like think about those things as you move forward and just be aware. And I think the more consciously aware we become, and I'm glad these dialogues are happening across multiple phases, but we're not quite there yet. Equity and equality is something that we're going to have to fight for probably for our lifetime. And I think don't get too tired in the fight. I would say especially when you're just starting in the field, like don't feel like you have to always make big stances and do those, because it's a long journey and I don't want anybody to get burned out. Like it's important for us to find our safe spaces who will support us. But like if there are issues that are important to you and you see those come up, like talk to people and be more educated about it.
Everyone gave such fantastic answers, so I don't have anything entirely new to add. I incredibly I entirely agree that diversity in thought is important and diversity in product. Fun story is one of my college interviewers, he studied CS at Harvard, and then he said a bunch of his friends got together to create a fashion startup that helps you choose what outfits you wear. And the reason why it failed was because they were all Asian tech bros who did not think about fashion. Yeah, exactly. And I just laughed so hard. I was like, you get all these extremely smart people together and they fail because they don't have diversity of thought. So I think that's a really important story. However, on the more serious side, there are genuinely real consequences to not having diversity. For example, with PPE, I don't know about any of the other girls out here, but I can never find a mask that actually fits me properly. I have to pinch like the middle thing all the way forward so I look like a swordfish because it's not designed for my small face. And I actually did a little bit of research in that, and most PPE is designed for American and European male populations, which is incredibly dangerous because frontline female workers don't get the same protection because this equipment is not designed for them. Another one is bias in medicine. There's some study that found that medicines between 1997 and 2000, 80% of those prescription drugs had greater side effects for women than men because there were little to no women in the clinical trials that tested these medicines because they assumed that men's bodies were the defaults. So there are definitely real life consequences that can actually be fatal if we don't have that diversity. So it's really important that we help to bridge that gap.
And I will
Awesome,
say,
thanks. Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
I just want to, Amy mentioned a really good point. I'm like, this is something like fighting for equity and diversity in tech, and also just generally is like, it's a lifelong thing. But what I've like learned and found out through like my journey is that small incremental change is the best way to sustainably make this change. You know, so you can't always like be the leader of a big social movement, and you shouldn't have to be. It's all about community action and making sure that like you and your community are all working together for something. And it can be like the smallest of things. It can be as simple as adding pronouns in your Zoom name, but just making those small changes. Eventually, it really does add up, and then suddenly you're in like a better world than it was before, which I think is really cool.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, just as what Amy said last time, like we all have to make our mark. And overall, since I guess since these products, these technologies are being made for everyone, we just have to make sure that the people behind it are with all different backgrounds and perspectives are also contributing towards making the technologies for everyone. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about imposter syndrome. So can you guys talk about any experiences you had with this and kind of how your approach to battling imposter syndrome?
So when I was getting my PhD, I was the only female in my class of 10 men and me by myself. And I also was very shy. Like if I had looked back at my college self, I would have never imagined I will volunteer to speak in a panel in front of people. I was very shy. And I always thought like, I should just put my head down and like study and like, do good on my grades. I had to learn how to speak up and things like that. So I think imposter syndrome can hit you in multiple different ways, and it will hit you at different career points. I am now taking a leadership role in my organization where I have to speak up. So I had to really learn how to do that. But, a few years ago, I was training a bunch of executives from an aerospace company, not the company that Chris works at, but a different aerospace company. And it was literally a room full of white men who were possibly between their 50s and 70s. And then, I was in front of the room getting ready to, I've been hired by their CEO to train their executives on how to create a more mentoring culture in their company. And one of the VP of engineering at the company, like, thought I was a secretary, and he asked me to go get him coffee, And at my first, I was like, I was all ready to be there and like train them. And I'm like, I have a PhD, I've been doing this for my life. Like I know how to, but that moment really froze me. Like I didn't know how to be like, like my first reaction was shock, and I didn't know how to get past it. But one of my colleagues who was there, who was, who reported to me, he was a younger white male, but he helped me actually, like he kind of interrupted this man and helped me kind of recompose myself. So one of the things I would say about imposter syndrome is it's going to hit you. And sometimes you may not have a perfect answer, a perfect situation, but find your allies, even at conferences when you go, like find other people who understand you, who know your qualities, who can speak on your behalf and kind of be your your liaison. And also, I always say that, like, and I say that I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's very, very bossy. And I always joke to her that, like, mommy worked very hard to be bossy. Like, I worked very hard. Like, I graduated college with multiple degrees. I worked very hard to be bossy. I'm like, how do you as a 3-year-old just like bossing us all around? But I do think you lose that confidence. But I think knowing that, like, you have accomplished something, right? Like, say that you studied CS, say that you built your first app, you've done something but like very few people have done. Even if you put your app on the market, and even if you don't get a lot of investors, don't get a lot of people to buy into it, you've still done something so important. So find people who tell you about the things that you've accomplished beyond what other people of your age may have done, and help find people who will help you build those confidence. It could be your parents, it could be your friends, it could be your investors, it could be your mentors, people in your ERG groups. But that's where I think the network really comes into play. And don't feel like in that moment you have to really overcome that imposter syndrome at that moment, because that's not how all of us deal with conflict and deal with stress factors. Sometimes we need to retreat to find and build ourselves up. So don't feel like you have to address it in that moment and be like the perfect person who fights that imposter syndrome, because it's going to be a constant battle, and like your network will help you build it up.
Yeah, I think Amy, you spoke to a lot of good points that actually resonated with me a lot. I think that, kind of going back to what Amy was saying before, not always painting a rosy picture is, when you get into industry, there are, again, going to be, it's going to be an uphill battle, right? I'd be lying to you if I told you that wasn't the case. Again, you're going to be different than a lot of people you're going to be working with. And as you move along in your career and you progress, there's always going to be those whispers, right, as to, why you got that position over somebody else, or why you were promoted ahead or got a leadership role over somebody else, right? And I think what Amy was really speaking to was, you need to be confident in your abilities and confident in what you have achieved in your career, in school, and you need to hold true to that. And I guess I bring this up because I've been in conversations with, coworkers where, they're speaking to, someone who's gotten promoted, and they'll, say something to the fact that, well, she only got promoted because she's a woman, and, they're pushing for women getting more leadership roles. And I've actually heard on the opposite side where, when I got promoted to a manager, typically you need, 7 to 8 years of experience. I got promoted after 5 years. And, I've heard people say, well, they're trying to increase diversity in management, and, a lot of the stuff going on with the Black Lives Matters is pushing, leadership to make moves like that, right? And so I say this to let you know, again, that you need to be, it does take, to be, have a certain level of confidence. You have to be thick-skinned. And again, you have to, be confident in your abilities. And to be honest with you, sometimes you can't worry about what other people think. You go out there and you have a chip on your shoulder, and you prove, right, that you deserve that, and that you work to get with what you got. And so, but to say that it's not going to happen would probably be sugarcoating things, because as you move along in your career, you're going to experience things like that, and it's unfortunate. But the best thing you can do is, kill it when you get that role, and prove them wrong. Show them that, you deserve that position, and that you got that position for a reason, and that you've been moved up, and you're taking on those new opportunities for a reason. So yeah, that's my take on imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I think Amy and Chris really said it best, so I'm not going to add much more. I just fake it till I make it. As cliche as that sounds, it does kind of work. But yeah.
For me, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome when I became lead director of Superposition. So I was an operations coordinator for Superposition 3, our third hackathon. And the way our team is organized, we have our coordinators on the bottom, and then we have our team directors like operations director, and there's lead director. So I formed my own ascension plan that I wanted to get lead director by senior year. So I'd become director of operations, then lead director. However, I was extremely, extremely shocked when the Superposition 3 lead director decided to appoint me. And I had to double check her text twice just to make sure she was actually referring to me and not somebody else who had more qualifications than I did. And at first, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome because I thought somebody else deserved the promotion over me. But then I sat down and I said, I may not have the experience that everyone else has, but I do have the skill set and the attitude to get this done. So the way I approached my imposter syndrome was to not be afraid to admit when I needed help, but also do my best to learn wherever possible. So there's a lot of things I didn't know how to do, such as setting up a dev post, which is a project submission platform for hackathons. I was able to ask my team for that. But because I excelled in leading other aspects, they didn't lose respect for me, even though I didn't know something extremely basic. And then the other time I really felt imposter syndrome was when I opened up my Carnegie Mellon decision letter, because last year they had an acceptance rate of 7%. So I was like, like, okay, I can try applying there, but I probably wouldn't get in. And then I looked online and I saw people who do so many research and tech internships still get waitlisted or not accepted. And I was like, I don't have any of that. Like, I hardly do CS whatsoever. And then I realized that I actually do have CS experience, but I kept telling myself I don't have any experience to protect myself from the fear of failure. But to that, I would say, don't be afraid to have confidence in yourself. Like, I will say this very shamelessly. Sometimes when I have low self-esteem, I just go to my LinkedIn and I said, I did that. Like, yes, because I find it so easy to forget all of my own accomplishments because I'm so used to them. But when you look at them from an outside perspective, you can see how amazing you are.
One thing that science has shown is that women tend to not apply for jobs unless they met 80% of the requirements. Men tend to apply to jobs once they meet somewhere between 40 and 50% of the requirements that are listed. So that's, I think, part of us, it's our own insecurities where we feel like I have to had hit all the marks, but just remember that there'll be somebody else who's half as qualified as you who will apply for this job in a second without even thinking about the things that you don't have listed. So just know that if you can speak on your behalf, and I think Stephanie mentioned something really important, which is knowing what you don't know and learning how to ask for help and knowing what you need to learn. So even when you go to job interviews or even I used to work in college admissions as well, it's very stark difference, especially in engineering schools, the male applicants and what female applicants apply. So just know that other people are applying with less qualification. You know probably more than a lot of your colleagues. Just know that as long as you can speak on behalf of what you don't know, of course, you never falsify, you never pretend like you know something you don't know, but acknowledging what you don't know and how you're going to learn it is a very important step in kind of finding that imposter syndrome.
Yes, thank you all so much for sharing all of that and all of these amazing tips on how to battle imposter syndrome, and just knowing that be confident in your own skills. I know a lot of you are high school students, so you might not have job experience to speak about. If you've had a summer job, that is a really great experience you can draw from. Have you done volunteering? I know a lot of high schools require you to do 20 hours of volunteering so you can actually graduate. Those are work experiences you can draw from and you can be proud of what you accomplished. I'm very sorry that we did not have time to get to the student asked questions today, but if you want to head over to one of the College Buddy chats later in this event, feel free to, and you can redirect all of these amazing questions to those college buddies because they'll have some experiences they can share with you. Before we do close out this event, here is a quick slide with a bunch of different resources. We have Technovation on there with Amy's stuff. We have Superposition, which is Stephanie's organization, and a bunch more. We'll also be sending out a PDF of the slides. I'll just send it right now. And if you're interested, absolutely feel free, click on those links, learn more, figure out how you can dip your toes in. Stephanie just dropped in her email and her LinkedIn, absolutely amazing. And we hope you take a look at this so that way you can find out, maybe I'll participate in this program and I will see, is this the right role for me? You can find a support network, and there's so much out there to bring you to where you want to be. Oh my God. And yay, the emails in the chat. But thank you all so much for coming out here to our representation in CS panel. I hope you all learned more about the necessity of representation in CS and how to support representation as well. And we hope that all you students take the wonderful messages from our panelists and pass it on to others, take it to heart, and work as you work to be inclusive and representative in your work, no matter what path you choose. There are still 3 more workshop and panel slots happening today as well as tomorrow. So Natalia and I hope that you students continue on with this event and learn more. If you really enjoyed what we talked about today, you should definitely check out Natalia's Tech and Society workshop that is happening Sunday morning. And it covers a lot of these topics that we talked about, and you'll get to see Natalia's beautiful face again. And a huge, huge thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to share their experiences with us today. So please give a huge round of applause with them in the reaction panel, either one of those like party things, an applause or a heart. And we could not have had such a fruitful panel without them. And with that, you all are not free to leave yet. I want us to take a group photo. So feel free to turn on your camera if you're comfortable and just smile for the camera, and we will take a group photo. So I have this, and maybe you'll see yourself on ExploreTech Media. All right, smile. All right, I see a few cameras coming on. And if you're not comfortable, feel free to throw like a smile reaction in the chat, whatever works best for you. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I took 3, so that should work out. But thank you all so much for coming out here today, and have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great rest of your event day, and go forth and be amazing.